Welcome to the Always Becoming podcast with Dr. Lynn Santiago. Dr. Lynn and her guests explore two questions: who am I? And are we always becoming? We all have a becoming story. Be inspired by the personal becoming stories told by guests who share the risks and challenges, the successes and the letdowns, the joys and the heartaches they experience while on their own becoming journey. Here's your host, Dr. Lynn Santiago.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. If this is the first time you are listening to this podcast, welcome. I hope that you will continue to listen as we have some incredible interviews with amazing guests, all talking about the question, are we always becoming? And just like that question, are we always becoming? This podcast is always becoming. And in the season one, the first season, the podcast was named The Dr. Lynn Santiago Show. And I decided that I really did not like the name, and I wanted the name to reflect what the podcast was about. So hence the new name, Always Becoming Podcast. There's also a new website, www.alwaysbecomingpodcast.com. So to kick off this new second season, I have with me Cameron Steele. He is the owner and producer at Contact Talk Radio Network. He produces my podcast, and he is here to help me launch this first episode. We have a talk about what's going on, what is new. I share some about my own becoming story and my current chapter that I have titled True Self, False Self. And if you listen, you will understand more about what that is, in particular relating to both Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr, who are monks. Thomas Merton is deceased. However, you are going to learn about my first understanding or hearing of Thomas Merton way back in my early 20s. So, again, welcome. And without further ado, let's welcome Cameron.
Hi, Cameron. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's been a little bit of time since we got to talk.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. And things are going well. And, you're starting your second season with us, which is fantastic.
Yes, it's hard to even believe. I can remember how nervous I was to get through the first podcast or the second. So to think I've already done like 38 episodes.
28
that's just
episodes.
Amazing. Yeah, 28. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 28 episodes. It's fantastic, really. I mean, when you think about how far you've come along with doing this, it's been amazing. It's a great launch. 28 episodes. What a learning process, I imagine, huh? About not about the podcasting, but about your work.
Well, you know what? The podcast has, of course, as I have been becoming, the podcast has been becoming, and there's a lot of things that I was needing to learn along the way. And there's certainly a lot more to learn as far as just like putting the podcast together. But it also gave me an opportunity to grow, in ways myself. And, the podcast, topic is, who am I? Right? How is it that we're becoming? How are we becoming? What is part of that becoming process?
Right.
And so as the podcast is always becoming in this process, I found that it has been instrumental for me in my own growing process.
Right. Right. And so the title of now with your new episode and the title of this episode being True Self, False Self, this is the current chapter of your becoming story. So what does that mean to you, the true self and the false self? What does that mean?
Well, when I started the podcast, my thoughts were predominantly wrapped around psychological theory because that's what I had been doing for the last 30 years.
Right.
right? Personality theory, Maslow and Jung and Rogers and yeah, all of these psychology theorists who have talked about or have theorized about how what our growing process is, and we're self-actualizing.
Right.
So that's what I've been doing for 30 years. And that's what when I set off to do this podcast, that's what I was thinking. But what happened is that I'm in the process of interviewing the guests, and a few, particularly a couple of the guests that I interviewed, it brought me back to some of my original beliefs, some things that I was introduced to in my 20s. And it's been almost like for this year, going back and reclaiming myself.
Yeah. This is interesting because I say that this is not an unusual story that I hear when I'm talking to our clients like yourself who are doing their podcast and doing such amazing work. There's self-growth that comes with the work. Just as as you're listening to this podcast of Lynn's, it's interesting because the more you listen to a podcast, the more your brain starts to go, I wonder, about your own life. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're questioning some of the things in your life and you're going, I think I need to change this or maybe add this to my life because I've been listening to this podcast. I've been listening to this information that Lynn has been offering up. And all of a sudden you're going, oh man, I got to change this, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but with a little gump, you can make a huge difference in your own life. And I find this with a lot of hosts. They all of a sudden they got their work and they're doing their work, and next thing you know, they're like, okay, I need to shift some things with my own work now.
Exactly. That is exactly it. And you say shift the things with my own work, and that's working on myself. And the true self, false self comes from Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr. Both of them are monks. Merton is deceased.
Yeah.
I started reading about Thomas Merton back in my 20s. And then I put it aside. I'm Catholic, so it comes from my Catholic background. I put it aside, and it resurfaced in this past year out of a couple of interviews that I did. And I realized that this was something that I have been working through and struggling with for several years. Like, where am I going? I think I started the podcast because that was the question I was asking myself. I was going, who am I, right? Who am I? I am. Like, it wasn't enough anymore to say, I am a therapist. It wasn't enough anymore to say, I am a mother. I am a wife, right? Those are roles. Those are hats that we wear. Those are masks, personas, identities. But that's part of the false self. And Richard Rohr says, I love this, the false self isn't bad. It's just not the true self. I love that because it means your false self is not bad. And, we need that. We need those roles and identities, hats to function,
Yeah.
However, that's not who we are. So that I am is not any of that stuff. So that's what that true self, false self means. And my understanding as I've been growing with that understanding over the past year.
Well,
yeah. So
that's really remarkable, and kudos to you, really. I mean, big kudos to you, because a lot of people would be like, I don't think I want to do this now, because it's challenging them to become something. And you talk about becoming, and that is becoming something that you never thought you'd be becoming before.
Exactly.
So to become something other than who you are, it can only be better than what you were before in your own mind and eyes. Because we always think to ourselves, I think that a lot of people think to themselves that, I'm pretty good where I'm at, and until they start realizing or they hear something, you go, yeah, I could be a lot better, and I'd like to become something more than what I am. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to become something more than they are. But if you want to live in this world, especially in this day and age, you do have to become more than who you are right now.
Exactly.
And it comes with some deep challenges that I think sometimes people, they think they're, and this is the thing, a lot of people think they're not ready. And I include myself in this. Sometimes we made a big move to Texas. Okay. The network moved to Texas. Everybody moved to Texas. We didn't know a soul in Texas. I mean, we're leaving all of our friends, all of our family behind, and we're moving to Texas, not because we don't want to be around them, but this was an opportunity for us that we thought, let's just take it and see what happens.
Exactly. So you don't know what it's going to look like when it presents itself. Right?
I kind of live by the philosophy of you don't know what you don't know. And unless you ask, the answer is always going to be no.
Right.
And so to become something more than what you are, you don't know what more you can become until you start asking the questions or listening to Lynn's podcast.
Right. And the way I like to look at it is that there's chapters in our life. We all have chapters in our life as we are going, kind of writing our becoming story, or really as it's unfolding. And we don't know what's in the next chapter. We don't know what's going to happen. We know we're on this path, this life path, and we can feel there's a natural pull that is kind of taking us along.
Right.
But we don't know what's in the next chapter. We have vision. We create visions of what we want, but there's no guarantee that that's what it's going to look like. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to say it's not going to look like the way you vision.
Right.
The vision is important. But one of the things that I learned from my guests the first season was that without intention, it was not my intention, the guests would just start telling parts of their becoming story. And most of the time it came from a shift in their lives, came from some adversity, some a trauma, some tragedy in their life, a loss. And that is what shifted them into this other direction of becoming who they were becoming and helping others on their own path of becoming.
Right. This is a lot of times you hear about people's personal story and their journey, and it's usually something that traumatic has happened in their life, or they're watching other people's stories and other people's journeys and going, oh, I like that. I'd like to try that. Or, that looks interesting because, you're right. People do generally have some kind of trauma or some kind of something that happens in their life that gives them a 180-degree turn perspective to look at things. And then some other people don't have anything like that happening. Their lives are running along smoothly, but there's always questions in the back of our mind. Do I become more than what I am? Or is this all I am?
Yeah.
Is this all I am, or is there more?
Another thing that found with talking with the guests is the concept that, we are becoming what we're meant to become. And it's fear, though, that holds us back. So we can slow it down. We can even get ourselves stuck in that that growing. And, and it's usually fear because it means that you have to let go of stuff.
Right.
Like you got to let go of things in order to keep moving forward and become what you were meant to become. People are afraid.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
So that's what I think is great about the episodes and the interviews is because the listeners can get hope from when they're listening to the guests. They can say, okay, I'm not the only one here. I can see that this guest was stuck too. And this is what they did to get unstuck. These guests was afraid too. And this is what he or she did to feel the fear and do it anyway.
Right. Well, let me ask you now an interesting question because, you clearly have defined what you've learned in your first season. The second season, it's, it has become its own process. You've changed the title, a new website, new email address. You've got some great upcoming guests coming on.
Yes.
So what else, what can listeners expect in the second season when it comes to the type of information you're giving them? What's different about the first season versus the second season?
Okay. So let's start with what's similar, right? What's going to be the same? The topic is always becoming and our becoming stories.
Right.
The guests I will still have guests who are working in the field or working in some capacity that they're helping others in their own becoming journey.
Right.
But there will also be telling a bit about their own becoming story.
Right.
I'm cutting it down and getting it really tightening it up to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Last session, it went all over the place. I was supposed to stay an hour, and sometimes
like
it
I
was
say,
less, sometimes more.
It's a learning lesson. It's a learning curve. With everything that we do, even the most prolific speakers in the world have lessons that they've learned and have changed things. So it's really interesting to watch you change how you're doing things. So that's really great to hear.
Right.
Now,
the name too. I think this is really big because just in what I've been just shared about, false self, true self, and that false self being depending on the labels or titles, right? To say this is who I am. Which is very limiting.
Right.
Limiting.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the reason why I dropped the Dr. Lynn Santiago show.
Okay.
I dropped it and I said, you know what? This is always becoming podcast. That's what the focus has been on.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to find the domain available.
Well,
so
that's an amazing feat in itself. All right, Lynn, thank you for answering that about what's coming up in the second season and the similarities to the first season. It's a very exciting time for you to be able to share this information, and especially with people's mindsets of what they're doing. And there are so many people that I think could benefit from this podcast of becoming, because you've answered many questions about what is it to become something, and it's just brilliant. So now in the second season, you've got a number of guests that are going to be on your show. Can you talk about some of those guests that people can expect to hear from?
The podcast is about all the different ways in which we can kind of foster and nurture our becoming, and the different methods or the different perspectives that help me. We don't all learn from the same perspective. That's what's good about. There's all kinds of different perspectives, and we're all in different places, and we hear things from different places.
Yeah.
So love that I have a very diverse group of of guests. So I already got lined up a psychologist, Jennifer Smith.
Okay.
She's going to talk about becoming more aware of the parts of self.
Okay.
So that means there are multiple parts to us, right? That there are we have many parts to us. And she's going to talk about that and the development, the awareness and development of that. I have Dharma, who was a guest last season.
I remember Dharma. Yeah.
Yes. So she's going to talk about how she uses ancient sacred dance as a way to connect to yourself.
Oh, interesting.
As a way that it connects to yourself, to you.
Yeah.
And that where you are in the moment, it's very mindful practice, very use of energy. And she's going to share how you can heal using sacred dance. And some of sacred dance is what most people know as belly dancing. So then I have Grace, I believe, Lang and Chelsea. I'm forgetting her last name, but they're both actually from Burnout Prevention Project. I'm going to be interviewing each of them separately.
Okay.
But they have come together to develop this program that helps women balance, their career and their family.
Yeah. Yeah.
and learn how to be able to say no, to set boundaries,
Oh, that's beautiful.
And this is important as far as our development.
That's really going to empower women, a lot of women, I think.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think they have
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
to say, and they
Yeah.
also have their own like becoming story. So that's why I kind of separated it out that way.
Right.
And then I also have Andrea Asev,
Mm-hmm.
and she's really interesting because she has an organization called Art to Action.
Okay.
And she calls herself a creative guide or an art guide. And she uses art and theater to help individuals with the transformation process.
That's brilliant. Really, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So I've got, these are episodes that are going to be
very exciting.
Yes, I am very excited about it. As you can tell, there's different angles.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've got a very nice eclectic way of looking at life, and your guests are very eclectic because you've got from dance to psychology to just a gambit of ways of people that are going to really help others empower themselves and become something more than who they are.
Yes.
Because we all have that in us. We all have that becoming of being able to, how did you become where you are, and what are you doing to become more than you are? And do you want to become more than you are?
Right. Exactly. And are you open to it? Are you open to the process?
Right. Well, this is very exciting. Now, let's give people your website so that people can find you.
Okay. So it is www.alwaysbecomingpodcast.com.
Mm-hmm.
People can follow me on Instagram. It is becoming_with_Dr. Lynn.
Fantastic.
Daily words of wisdom, inspirational,
fantastic.
Love the Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram is fun. I like Instagram, but TikTok, I've been doing a lot of TikTok.
Oh, too, so. No, I haven't gotten there, but I know I'm making it when my daughter, who's in her early 30s, says that I am just, I'm taken off with my Instagram profile.
Right,
yeah.
right.
She said she's impressed. I'm like, okay.
Well, you see, when your daughter that's 30 years old looking into your work and what you're doing and says she's impressed, that's impressive.
Yes.
So good job. Well, listen, Lynn, thank you so much for allowing me to interview you on your episode on your first episode of the second season. And listen, folks, you really do got to tune in to Lynn and listen to her. And if you have not listened to her previous season, then, just go right back to the beginning of episode 1 and go from there, because there's a lot of brilliant information in there. And I myself am a subscriber, so I do listen to your podcasts. And I really like the information that comes through. And Dharma, I think Dharma was probably one of my favorite guests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, yeah. She was coming from Italy.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun. of fun. So I enjoyed her. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Thank you so much.
So it's always great to talk to Cameron. And I am so excited about the launch of this season and about you joining me and the guests as we talk about the concept of always becoming, and we share our becoming stories. If you have a becoming story that you would like to share, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me at im@alwaysbecomingpodcast.com. Learn more about this podcast and episodes, even those from season 1, at www.alwaysbecomingpodcast.com. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, becoming_with_Dr. Lynn, LYNNE. Thank you.